being good sometimes isn't good enough. You got to be good at what you're doing, but you also have got to be in a position where you can show people why you're good, why you matter, why yours is better. And you don't have to be first. That's something when I talk to a lot of businesses, is, well, somebody else got there first. Okay, well, yeah, that's wonderful. Google wasn't first. Apple wasn't first. Starbucks certainly didn't invent coffee shops. All these people, but they had a mindset that was, okay, I see what you're doing, but what if we did this?
You are now listening to the highlight reel builder for authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, best-selling author of the book Stay the Course, and Maxwell Leadership Certified Team Member, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some tips and techniques to advance yourself up next. Today's episode is sponsored by the brand new Northbound to Your Success shop, where you can buy the wonderful logo, advance others to advance yourself, in t-shirt form, mug form, heck, even a phone case if you like a phone case. Either way, click on shop on goingnorthpodcast.com, cop a t-shirt, hoodie or two, and be sure to tag the host when you do, so that way I can give you a shout out on a future episode of the podcast. Now let's get down to business with the episode for real. And today on the highlight reel builder for authors, known as the Going North podcast, we got another super special, awesome human for you today. Back for 3 times the charm, the hat trick indeed. That's right, indeed. You know him, you love him. He's back as a returning champ, because today, my friends, he's a 6-time, you heard that right, folks, 6-time best-selling author, media personality, keynote speaker, and U.S. Air Force veteran. So let's give it up for the one, the only, the FC elite himself, Frank Zaccari. How you doing today, Frank?
It's wonderful, Dom. It's great to be with you. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Oh, yeah, that's right, indeed. As a great plum pleasing pleasure, as Les Brown would say. That's right. All the plums will be pleased. That's right.
That's good. I've actually heard him say that.
Yes, indeed. But it ain't about plums, it's about the mighty Frank. So my goodness, you're returning as another conquering hero once again, another best-selling book. My goodness, what was it? 3 bestsellers in what?
In 1
9
year.
months? 1 year, yeah.
Yeah, 12 months. It was, it's been quite an adventure. It's exciting. And there's so many people to thank. You can't, you don't, this doesn't happen by yourself. There's a lot of work goes into it, and making connections with people like you and Kat Canvas and Teresa Velarde, who are my publishers, and Melissa Van Oss, who helps me with marketing. And so you got to put a team together. And I don't care what it is that you're doing in life. You got to surround yourself with people who are better than you are, better than I am at their specialty area. It was something I learned a long, long time ago. Was if I'm the smartest guy in the room, then man, I'm in the wrong room. I got to go get somebody in here.
You can say that again, indeed, because teamwork does make that dream manifest, indeed. My goodness, indeed. My goodness, indeed. So, man, oh man, it's 3 best-selling books in 12 months. It's like, I guess 3 out of the 4 quarters of best-selling book just pops up. So what was the process to really get the books out there and to really market it? Like, I'm pretty sure it was a big challenge, because did you like set yourself up for success? You like already had the content written. It was just a matter of putting the puzzle in the right piece, or the piece in the puzzle.
Well, it was interesting because it's something I thought about for a long time. And I'd been a business owner or a corporate executive for 35 years. And it was just simply a matter of taking the things that went well, and more importantly, the things that did not go well, and writing them down. The first book was, because I gave a lot of talks in the pre-COVID era. And one of the talks that I always end the talks by saying is, a secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are, right? And so I was talking to Kat Canvas and Teresa, who we both know very well. And they said, why don't you write a book about that? So I said, all right, let's see what we can do. So the first book was Business Secrets for Walking on Water. And it focused more on things you don't know. That what takes your legs out from under you in business or in life or relationship or whatever is things that you don't know, that you didn't see coming, you didn't expect, you didn't prepare for, right? Those are the things that cause you the most heartache, not what you know. And so that was book number one. It hit bestseller. That was thrilling because I was like, oh my God. And then Kat and Teresa said, well, you can't just write one, you're going to have to do a series. So we said, well, let's look at this. The first one focused on business, more business related. So now let's look at relationships, because one of the things that we put in the first book, Dom, was you cannot separate your business and your personal life. You cannot do it. It can't be done. And I tried for many, many years, and my marriage failed mainly because I couldn't make that connection. So the second book was Business and Personal Secrets for Avoiding Relationship Landmines. And that delved into everything revolves around relationships. I don't care what it is you're doing. It's all about the relationship that you're building. And someone asked me a question when I was putting the book together, and they said, well, Frank, you were in the military. I said, yes, I was. And they said, well, in the military, it's all about the mission. The mission. That's what matters. And I said, well, no, that's not actually true. What really matters is the relationship and the respect and the trust that you have built with the people who are going to be in that mission with you. That's what makes the mission. Because if you don't have that respect and that trust in those individuals, and you haven't built that, nothing's going to happen. So the guy looked at me like, well, I said, I was a medic. I was a medic in the military. So I never was a combat medic, though. And so in combat, like Vietnam, my time, when you hear things like that, someone's hit and medical yell, medic up. So the medic's jumping up, going out, trying to get the wounded individual. Well, two guys with machine guns get up and spray the area. Okay. You got to trust it's going to happen. You got to have rebuilt that rapport and that respect, and you have to know what my job is, and I got to know what their job is. And the medics that I knew that were in the firefights, they would come back and say, absolutely, that's what happens. And if you hadn't built that trust, then you jump up and say, well, hey, that guy's an idiot. The hell with him, right? So that one was, and then the personal relationship side, like why do things fall apart, and how to get yourself out of becoming letting the creeping scope of the job take over your life, because it will, and it's subtle, right? It's that, well, I got to get this one project done. And then it's, okay, well, we got to get this one trip. And then all of a sudden, your days are going from 8 to 10 hours to 12 to 16 hours. And you're coming home and you're tired and you're late. And even when you get home, you're not present when you get home. And what I learned, unfortunately, was being a workaholic, that if you thought you were doing it for your family, you're not. So get that out of your mind. If that's the mindset you have, because you're not. What that's saying is, when you come home, you're saying to your wife, you really don't matter that much, or your spouse, or your kids. You know, it's yeah, I'm sorry, but this is more important, right? You can't. It's a terrible thing. And when I was coming up and growing up, it was do the job, do what it takes. That's what matters. If your professional life is in sync, everything else is going to work. Okay, not true. Absolutely not true. You have to have some sense of balance, and that's where of trying to avoid these landmines and pointing it out to people. Hey, these things are there. You're going to hit them if you're not prepared and being careful for it. So we got done with the second book, and it made bestseller. So now I'm getting giddy. Oh my God. And Kat and Teresa said, well, what are we going to do for the third one? And she said, let's go into Getting Unstuck, because you address the business side, you've addressed the personal side. And even if you're doing everything well on both sides, you're going to get stuck at some point, because getting stuck is inevitable. Now, staying stuck is a choice, but you're going to get stuck. And you could be stuck in a job for a whole multitude of reasons. You could be stuck in a job, right? You're in a bad culture, but you got to have a job. And, it's easier to stay there in a place that you're not happy than it is sometimes to try to get a job and do the application process and go through all that nonsense that you have to go through. So you stay. Other times I've seen people get stuck is they're making too much money. They're in a toxic culture, but they're getting paid a lot of money. This happened to me one time when the organization was, and I traveled a great deal, so I wasn't in the office every day. So I was setting up operations around the world. And I would come back in and say, well, hey, this isn't right. So it was a matter of, they're not the most ethical people on the planet, and they're almost treading on illegal. And you start to watch and think, okay, Frank, you come back from a trip from overseas, and okay, it's really not that bad. But you're back in your mind saying, man, they're paying a lot of money. And then you start looking at it and saying, no, this is wrong. And I'm not going to sell my soul. I'm not going to sell my integrity. And so in my case, I said, I'm out of here, and moved on before I had another job in place. Now that's common today. You see a lot of the younger people are just saying, yeah, I'm not happy here, I'm leaving. And again, people that came up when I came up, you just didn't do that. It just wasn't done. And then after I became a single dad, when I had custody of my two daughters, and I had to leave the tech world. I was a tech executive for many years, and we were living in Seattle. So we moved from Seattle back to Sacramento, where my kids were born, and we had a bigger support system in place. And I bought an insurance agency. So I've said this many, many times. When you go from high tech, incredibly proactive industry, to insurance, incredibly reactive industry, and you're a type A personality like me, it's like dying and going to hell.
Ouch.
So I didn't like it. But it was a means to an end. And this is what I tell a lot of people. You may not be in a good situation, but why are you staying there? And for me, it's a means to an end. I can build this, I can grow this. I have to get my two daughters through school. I have to get them in place, get them get their careers started. And so that was the plan. So for 13 years, we worked this insurance business. It became very profitable. My youngest daughter graduated from Arizona State in December. I sold the company in March. This was December, a few years back. And I remember the industry, the state people from the insurance company coming to my office, and they said, what are you doing? You're one of the most profitable agencies in the whole state of California. People in your position don't sell. And they said, what's the matter? And I said, okay, well, I'm going to sell. So I'll be perfectly honest with you. Number one, I hate this. Mm. I am not happy. I have not been happy doing this. I do not like this. And number two, the agency is worth a lot of money now. So I'm going to sell it while I'm high, while things are high. So it was fortunate, but there was a means to an end. So it wasn't where I was just miserable. I'm going to continue to be miserable. There's a way out. And this one, when A, B, and C occurs, then I'm going to move on to something different. So now you're 60 years old. And you say, oh, God, now what am I going to do? Oh, there's that euphoria. I'm done. I'm out of this. So for a week, and then you go, there's no money coming in.
Yeah.
So it's, now what? Now what are you going to do? So you pick up the pieces and move forward. The other thing that I found out as I was doing the research on this book is people getting stuck in relationships. And again, so many times they're not happy in the relationship. And then it comes down to, why are you staying in the relationship? And a big thing that came back was, well, I don't want to be alone. And if anyone's ever been in a toxic relationship, you're far better off being alone than you are being in a toxic relationship. And that's something where you have to you have to look at the big picture here. Is it there's being alone and there's being lonely. Okay. So when I researched this and I was talking to people, they said, well, I don't want to be alone. I said, well, let's define that. Look, tell me more. And they would go into it, and I said, no, what you're saying is you're afraid of being lonely, not alone. And lonely is an emotion. It is something that you had that you don't have anymore, or something that you want and you don't have it. So that brings the loneliness factor. Being alone is a choice. Being alone is, I prefer being in solitude, of being with myself. And as we were going through this, we said, I was between marriages 10 years. I was single for 10 years while I was raising my daughters. And I was alone by choice. But I never felt lonely. It was, I have to work on me. I have to figure out what it is that I did, why I'm so terrible in personal relationships. So let's see if we can figure this out, number one. And then what else is it that I want to do? What am I looking for? Why am I picking the wrong people? And because the common denominator in every bad relationship I've had is me. So let's see what it is that I'm doing and how I can put this together and make it come back and become a better individual. And so that was a big thing, is this fear of loneliness. And as I would talk to people as we were putting the book together, and they would sort of pause for a second and think, yeah, that's absolutely it. It's being lonely that scares me. It scares the hell out of me. And we found that because we always hear, you can be anything you want to be, you can do anything you want to do. It's all coming to fruition, right? And one of the things that we looked at was, well, there's certain things that just aren't going to happen. They're just not, right? I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to be Derek Jeter before there was Derek Jeter, right? I don't have the physical skills. It's not going to happen, right? But that was the goal. That's what I wanted to be. And when I looked at, as we were talking to some businesses, as we were putting this book together about being stuck on the business side, we went in and said, well, let's look at organizations who said, this is what I'm going to do, and just floundered. Okay, from people that are old enough to remember this, remember there was Beta and there was VHS. Okay, well, from a technical standpoint, Beta, when you talk to sound engineers, was far superior. VHS won. VHS was made it easier, and they were willing to license it to multiple places, and Beta was going to hold on. Oh, I'm going to do it my way. This is my thing. Beta's gone. Beta's gone. And we looked at the phone, the cell phone industry world, and back the dominant player, I remember, was BlackBerry. Again, for those of you old enough to remember that. BlackBerry's whole approach was, it was more like a page, right? So you get a message, you look at your thing, you get your BlackBerry. Okay, so BlackBerry didn't have a very good keyboard. BlackBerry didn't have good graphics, the whole thing. And the BlackBerry people, their whole idea was, not everybody needs a phone. This is not for everybody. This is for the busy executive, for the busy individual who needs to be aware of what's going on when they're traveling or whatever the case may be. Steve Jobs over at Apple, he says, I don't think so. I don't think so. A phone is for everybody. And their whole model and mindset was, I'm going to take it from a nice to have to a must have. And then all of a sudden you started seeing everybody with a phone, even young kids with a phone. And BlackBerry just dug in their heels and said, no, absolutely not. That's not the case. This isn't going to work. It's a fad. It's going to go away. So they were stuck in their mindset, stuck in their model. And that model just blew them away, and they're gone. And it didn't matter that you were technically superior. The other area that was really interesting, I was in tech for a long time, and there used to be the database wars. And the database wars, because the Unix operating system was becoming in vogue, and what was going to be the database to do this, all right? And so there was a battle. It was Sybase and Ingress and Informix and another one who I'm forgetting. And then it was Oracle, okay? But when you talk to the engineers and the technicians, Oracle was the worst. Oracle used the most resource. Oracle was the least best behaved. Oracle just didn't work as well technically as the other ones. And so as they're going down the road, Informix and Ingress and Sybase, they're all focused on, well, we're better, so we're going to focus on making the technology better, and people aren't stupid. They'll see that we're better, and we will win. Oracle, Larry Ellison, who we used to work with, he said, we're going to go hire assassins, and we're going to go out and penetrate the marketplace. And we're going to get, there's two books that describe this extremely well. One is Crossing the Chasm, which is basically you're a small business. You get to this point, okay, I grow, got the early adapters in, now what? Okay, now you got to cross this chasm to get over to the other side. All right. And the other book was called Inside the Tornado, which is basically about Oracle. So you get to the chasm, you create this tornado effect, which is I'm going to dominate and get market share and land on the other side. Now, when I have market share, then I'll go back and fine tune the product based on feedback from actual customers, as opposed to me saying, no, this is the best way to do it, or no, this makes more sense. The other guys are all gone. Oracle's the only one left. And the thing is, you gotta love about Oracle is I had an office in Emeryville, California, and from my office, I could look out my window and I could see Sybase headquarters. And while this was happening, Sybase is fighting to stay alive, and Oracle's now picking up the market share and becoming a dominant player. Oracle gets this big giant tractor trailer recruiting thing, pulls up across the street from Sybase. And you see, and I'm standing there watching this, and people are coming out of their break, going into the Oracle thing, going back in, quitting, coming out with their stuff.
Mm.
And so there's some things that being good sometimes isn't good enough. You got to be good at what you're doing, but you also have got to be in a position where you can show people why you're good, why you matter, why yours is better. And you don't have to be first. That's something when I talk to a lot of businesses, is, well, somebody else got there first. Okay, well, yeah, that's wonderful. Google wasn't first. Apple wasn't first. Starbucks certainly didn't invent coffee shops. All these people, but they had a mindset that was, okay, I see what you're doing, but what if we did this? What if we made this little adjustment? What if we convince people or show people that it's not a nice to have, it's a must have? And I can remember in the pre-Starbucks days, you would get up and you'd go to a coffee shop or Mr. Dunkin' Donuts, and for those of you in the East, and you would get coffee and a donut or whatever the hell you're going to get, right? Starbucks changed that whole dynamic, because you would go to Starbucks and stand in line and get coffee, but you could get it any way you wanted it. It was your 5 minutes. You could do anything you want, any way you want. And then you see people get back in their car, go to the bagel store or the coffee shop or the donut shop or whatever. So they changed the world. Now you make 2 stops in the morning, not 1. But that first stop, you get everything you want, however you want it. And then slowly Starbucks morphed into bringing food in. And what's really interesting about how what that approach is because there was Starbucks. I used to live in Seattle, and the original Starbucks was in downtown Seattle. It was in the middle of the block near the Pikes Market, right in the middle of the block. There's no parking there. So on the corner was a place called Seattle's Best on one corner. Then there was Starbucks. At the end of the corner was Tully's. So there's 3 coffee shops, 1 city block. And I didn't know what Starbucks was at the time. And I had an operation out of Seattle, and I'm up there waiting for it to get picked up by my sales team. And I'm watching this dynamic. And the 2, Seattle's Best and Tully on the corner, who actually had parking, had a few people there. And Starbucks had people standing outside because there was no seating in Starbucks at that time, standing in the rain in Seattle.
Wow.
And so my guys pull up, and I said, look over there. And I said, what's going on? Why are people standing in the rain to get coffee? Why these people put narcotics in the coffee? What's the deal here? And they said, no, it's whatever. They're explaining it to me. He says, you want to get some? And I went, no, I'm not going to stand in the rain to get coffee. So we were there for a few days, and every time we saw a Starbucks, they're packed. They're packed. We went to Vancouver, Canada on that trip. And in the big area downtown where the businesses are in Vancouver, there's a giant Starbucks on one corner, and kitty corner is another giant Starbucks, and they're both packed. What's going on here? What was the differentiator that pushed Starbucks over the top? Why are they people doing this? And again, you could get anything you wanted, any way you wanted, but Starbucks broke the mold. Is that people would in the beginning, none of them had a blender, because blenders break down, blenders slow down the line, blenders increase the cost. And back then, in the early 1980s, I grew up in New York, coffee was a dime and refills were free. Who's going to pay back then 35 cents for a cup of coffee? Now it's like $5 for a cup of coffee. It was a young person in Malibu, California, and he brought his own blender to work. And he started making the blended drinks, and he put them out for people to try. And the people loved them. They went crazy. They loved them. Now, Starbucks, to his credit, said, we might be onto something here. So instead of being like the other database companies and the Beta and the BlackBerry and say, no, this is how we do what we do, they said, we might have something. Let's create the next practice, not the best practice, the next practice. And one of the things I found that why so many organizations and people get stuck is I listen for basically a couple of statements. And one is, I'm following the best practice, or it is what it is, or this is how we do it, right? Or this is just the way I am. And when I hear any one of those four statements, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, these people have pretty much given up. They're not willing to look and expand and continue to excel. And I did turnarounds of failing companies for many, many years. And that was you always heard those things. And it was, if you continue on that path, you're going to be stuck. Those of you who live in the South are going to be stuck in the mud. If you live in the Northeast, you're stuck in the snow. You know what I'm talking about? You're spinning your wheels and you're spinning your wheels and you're not going anywhere. So getting stuck is inevitable. It is going to happen because life's not perfect and everything's not going to go the way you thought or planned or hoped. But what happens when you get stuck? Are you willing to make an adjustment? Are you willing to do what it takes to create that next practice? Or look internally into yourself and say, if I'm floundering in personal relationships and I'm the common denominator, maybe I'm the issue. And see what it is that you need to do or could be doing to make it better. That makes sense? I went way on with your one question.
Well, hey, it was a darn good answer to a wonderful question, because it's so true, because not only you actually applied that in your own life with actually hiring an actual publishing company with Kat and Teresa to publish books and become bestsellers, you actually did the research and you lived through the research.
Yeah, it was like a core dump of, okay, what are all the dumb things that I've done in my life, and what could I have done to make it better? We see this with the wellness. A good friend of ours, Peggy Wilms, is coming out with a book here very shortly on wellness and fitness. And one of the things that in the wellness world, the take 2 aspirins and call me in the morning model, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We both know Dr. Marcus, and he has even said the process doesn't work because you wait for someone to get sick and then you treat them, and you can't keep up. You cannot keep up. So now we need to start moving more toward self-care, self-help. And that's what Peggy's book and all her collaborators and Dr. Marcus are going to be focused on. But one of the things that I found is, and we all know this, we just don't do anything about it, is stress is one of the dominant causes, one of the root causes of an awful lot of chronic illnesses. And we know this, but we get to COVID world, and it was always stress. When we get to COVID, stress went off the charts. It's just a whole different dynamic. Your kids are home. If you had kids, now your house becomes the school. It becomes your office. It becomes your spouse's office if you're both working. Now you have to become a teacher. You got to learn Zoom. I gave a talk one time, Dom, and I said, now be honest. I want to show of hands. How many people even knew what Zoom was 2 years ago? This was as COVID was coming up, and it was like, buddy, some of the real high techie guys, oh, I know about it, but did you use it? No, you didn't use it. You knew it existed. So everything changes. The stress level, when you go through change, it's such a stressful thing. It's not people aren't afraid of change. They're afraid of them changing. They don't want to change. They want other things to change, but they don't want their life to change. And in this wellness model, things like integrative medicine and stuff like energy healing, to tapping people, that at one time I thought, what the hell are they doing? Then you start listening and watching and going, that makes sense. Okay, I'm controlling my own levels of stress. I'm coming out of that immediate crisis stuff. And I was in the military, and I worked in a veterans treatment court, which is it's a real court with a real judge. And these are veterans who have committed a crime, but it's not a heinous crime. It's usually stated something stupid, drunk driving, something dumb, right? But they committed a crime. And a veteran treatment court focuses more on rehabilitation as opposed to punitiveness. And so if you get accepted into it, if you do everything right, it's a 1-year treatment plan. And you have to go to these meetings, they're court ordered. And you have to take anger management class, you have to take alcohol abuse, you have to take whatever your issue happens to be. You have to do it. And you have to show up in court, and you have to be tested, drug tested on a regular basis. Right. And at the end of the period, if you get through the program, your charges are expunged. They're gone. All right. As I'm watching this, I'm seeing massive PTSD. And as I was observing it, and PTSD is real. It's a real physical thing. And many times they can feel it. They've learned what the trigger could potentially be. And when that trigger occurs, you have to do something to calm yourself within like a 20-minute window. You got about a 20-minute window. And so I started learning about this tapping, and I started learning about meditation and Reiki and shaman and these types of things. And I thought, this is actually working. And so one of the things we're putting together with some of my business partners is a series of wellness clinics. And we still don't have a name for it yet, but we've got an okay for funding. We don't have the money yet, but we have the okay for the funding. And it's going to be putting these in areas where people can come in. And if you don't have money, just come in and we will teach you how to do this. We got this idea with all the genocide and the wars in Africa and Rwanda and the Congo. And there was a group that went down there and taught this tapping method to these people to just help them cope. You're not solving the problem, but you're helping that individual to cope. And we saw that and went, okay, well, we can bring that here, because it's a different kind of stress. You're not worried about genocide and being blown up here, but there's all kinds of other different stress factors. And those are going to be coming out soon. We put them, it looks like we're going to start in Phoenix and then start moving from there. And we've gotten even some feedback from some high-end hotels who have said, we'd like to have it in our hotel.
Oh, wow.
So as people come, this is another thing that they could be offered. And it's identifying the practitioners. And one of the things in Peggy's book, and you and I have talked to many of the people that are in that already, is it takes a long time to get that skill set in place. And they're basically, they're paid less than teachers. So they're scrambling to try to stay alive. They've got this great skill, they got this great tool, but now you got to run a business, and now you got to do accounting, and now you got to do all the state nonsense, and now you got to do all this other stuff. Well, if we can take that away, we'll take that problem away from you. We'll bring business to you that you don't already have. That will help you get unstuck. Because you do this for a period of years and you're all excited and you make enough money and okay, then you change careers. And then and that's so much fun, changing careers. Right?
Yeah.
So
Oh
that's kind of
yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the health clinics too, because that's definitely a wonderful idea. Because I remember you mentioning it on a big Zoom call. I think we had a few months ago talking about the wonderful book that's coming out with Peggy and the gang, and it's so true. And it's really good that we have all these wonderful alternative health sources to help out people like that folks might not even think about or might not even consider. It's like one of those don't knock it till you try it sort of things.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been interesting because as I was in my corporate world, at one point I was in South Carolina and we had 1,400 people in the facility. And our medical rate was, health insurance was off the charts. And then again, South Carolina is not the healthiest state on the planet. So we got to get this down. So I called in the health carrier and kind of laughed, right? And said, well, if you can get 10% of your employees in some kind of a health program, then we'll give you X percent of a discount. So I look at the general manager and he says, well, we're going to do this, Frank, which means you're going to do it, Frank. And we had a nurse in the facility because there's 1,400 people. It's a manufacturing center. So we said, all right, let's put this together. We had aerobic classes, we had walking things, we had jogging clubs, we had blood pressure things, we had nutrition programs. And out of 1,400 people, 700 got into something.
Wow, that's huge.
So that is huge. So we called the guy back, and my boss, his name was Al Quick. He grew up in South Carolina. I loved him. And he would do I'm just a dumb old Southern boy. And as soon as he said that, I would think he's going to take the fillings out of this guy's teeth by the time he's done. And they said, well, that's impressive. And he goes, well, here, we'll give you that discount. And he goes, no, you said 10%. We have 50%. So let's stop that. It goes significantly higher. Now that stayed in place for quite a period of time. It was good. It was something that was sustainable. But most health programs, I just interviewed somebody recently and they said, we're constantly trying to do things to reach out to the employees. And we're always asking them, what do you want? And we're trying to put these programs in place. And we get such poor participation. And then they stop it. It was Brandy Heather, interviewed her. Her interview went live last week. And I said, Brandy, you told me you're asking the wrong question. What should they be asking? You don't ask them, what do you want? What do you like to do? What would something that makes you feel like you want to come here? And so the people are smart. Employees aren't stupid. They know we're gonna do this, right? Okay, well, this is about the 14th time we've heard this, right? And one group told me, look, Frank, this is same circus, different clowns. That's all it is. So a new person comes in, they get this job, you're supposed to do this, all right, they try to ramp it up. But if they don't do it in corporate America, as you know, in corporate America, if you're in a big company and you're moving up, if you can not do anything stupid in a 2 to 3 year window, you'll get promoted or transferred out, right? So you start a program and you keep it alive and limping along, but you're out of there soon. So you're out, the new principal come in and they look, there's a 25% participation in this. Why are we even doing it? And then it becomes a numbers game as opposed to a people game. And that's why so many people in organizations are stuck, is because they keep looking at the number and they look at people as assets, and people aren't assets. People are people. And if they're not respected, like we said way in the beginning, if they're not respected and there's not trust, they're not going to stick around. In the old days, they stuck around, but their heart and soul wasn't in it. And then you start to floundering.
Definitely true. Definitely true. Man's dropping that heat, baby. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. And I'm guessing that's probably one of the major reasons for your passion behind this, I guess, with your time in the military and all the folks that you've had conversations with, of course, everything else that you're doing. So, my goodness, that is definitely a great mission indeed. So, starting in Phoenix, and I'm guessing, what is it, at least 5 locations is the goal in the 10-year period or something like that?
Well, we're hoping to get it, we'll start with, you got to get the first one up and running first, and then see how that's going. And then we've targeted some other places. And the locations tend to be communities and cities where they already have this big commitment toward health and fitness. Seattle's a good one. Denver's a good one, where they have that mindset because they're more outdoorsy and health conscious, and they're willing to do more than just run to the doctor. And then we'll see where it moves from there. And it's it's exciting. It's a big lift. It's a heavy lift. And we hear it from so many people, Dom, who said, you can't do this. You're biting off too much. This can't be done. And I remembered Nelson Mandela, everything's impossible until somebody does it. Right. So it's been torturous at times. But we said, no, this is right. And we're going to continue to pursue it. And we're going to find a way to get this off the ground. And then when the money commitment came, that was like, now again, we don't have the money yet, but we've got the money commitment in place. And then it's putting all the stuff around it, how you're going to market it. And let's start zeroing in on who the target people are going to be. And there's going to be multiple types of customers that you have to deal with. And so that's beginning soon here. We selected the company to do that big, massive research. And then what becomes really important is the data, because the data in and of itself is so what? Data, when it becomes information, then it becomes powerful. So what are the trends? Somebody with A, B, and C, and we did these things. What was the improvement? And one of the stuff that drove me crazy when I sold my business, when I sold the insurance agency, I started working with some nonprofits, because that's what you do, right? You sell your business and, okay, I'll go do something for the good of the world. And one of the things that drove me crazy was there was never a closed loop, at least the ones that had brought me in. I would say, well, tell me about what you're doing. So, well, we saw 2,000 people in the last year. And I said, that's wonderful. What happened? Well, we come in and we go from here to here. And then what? Then what happens? Well, then we refer them to these other places. And I said, well, these are people that are in need and they've been through some kind of trauma, or maybe they don't have a lot of funding themselves personally. And now you give them names of places and they got to go find us themselves. And I said, well, yeah, because we don't do that. And I said, well, you're kind of defeating the purpose. So yes, you did something good by getting them from A to B, but they need to get to H. Right.
Right.
And now they're out there floundering again. And so it's got to be something where you close that loop. And having statistics without, I said this one time, I said, data without information doesn't become knowledge. Data just becomes noise. You got to get data so it becomes information so that we can turn it into knowledge. And then once you get to that point in time, now you can make an impact. And that's where the health centers, and that's what being stuck, and that is with pretty much the common theme that's out there. I interviewed Dr. Edward Hess, who's a futurist from the Darden School in Virginia. And one of the things he said was that he said, Frank, to survive, organizations and people and marriages and anything else is going to have to become more humanistic. It's going to have to be, people are no longer assets. And what you learned, the content management, which was basically, I know more than you, therefore I'm more important and I need more money. That's going to be gone because there's too much data. And what you know today in 2.5 years is going to be irrelevant. Right? So it's that ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. That's going to be the big difference. And that's why we see people as I've got this good thing and now I'm stuck, but I'm not willing to unlearn. And I certainly don't want to relearn. And we see this high failure ratio that occurs. So it can be done. It's a wonderful world when you change your mindset that I'm going to be looking and I'm always going to be learning because there's always a better way of doing something. And I really don't care what it is you are or what your business is. There's someone is going to come up with a better way if you're not the one doing it.
Yeah. That's the hard truth right there.
Yeah.
That's definitely the hard truth right there. So, my goodness, with this whole theme of getting unstuck and helping other folks to get unstuck and actually making sure they don't fall into the quicksand,
Yes.
which is so artfully depicted in the cover of the book, the latest one.
Yeah.
What would you
And the artist
consider?
was tremendous.
Yes, indeed. So, what would you consider probably the most valuable thing that you had to unlearn that helped you to really shift to where you are today, where you have this high level of thinking?
Well, the big thing was there is no one way to do stuff. And I worked for some big corporations, NCR and then AT&T, and it was in the military. So they have ways of doing everything. Now, the difference is in the military, they also teach you flexibility and how to pivot and how to change. Because I think Mike Tyson's line, everybody has a plan until they punch in the mouth.
Yep.
Well, in the military, I'm going to paraphrase it, is the battle plan, when the first bullet is fired, the battle plan goes out the window, right? So you have to be able to adjust. And that's where I saw the big difference between the military, because when I got out in the corporate world, they said, well, you're in the military. You guys don't think. And I'm like, no, that's not true. We think all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
More on the corporate side, you don't think because you have this is what we do. And we're not willing to adjust. It's the old, it's not broke, don't fix it. And so that was the biggest challenge growing up when I grew up was, you go to school, you get a job, you go in the military, you do whatever, and then you just work your ass off for the rest of your life, and then you die. Right. And I wasn't willing to do that. And then having had a marriage fail and becoming a single parent. And that was a big eye opener because now I have 2 daughters and I got 2 young daughters and I never was a teenage girl. So you want to talk about a challenge. Oh my God. So that was, okay, what you did got you here. You got to here. If you want to get here, it's not going to get you there. So what got you to where you are is not going to get you to where you want to go. And that was a big thing that I had to learn and understand and get out of corporate America and then start what I'm doing now, advising and consulting and writing books and doing whatever else is necessary. And that's the biggest challenge to me is if you're not continuing to learn, if you're not willing to continue to look at different ways, if you're not surrounding yourself, and I hear this diversity and inclusion all the time, it turns so many people off. But if you don't have the diversity and the inclusion of people who have different ways of thinking, if you don't have women, if you don't have minorities, if you don't have veterans, if you don't have people from other countries, you're missing so much, because that collaborative model is going to be so important going forward. And if you cannot do that, you're going to flounder and you're going to be stuck in the mud.
Amen to that. We don't want to get stuck in no mud around here, y'all. That's right, indeed. Avoid the mud. That's right. Or you become a mud monster for being stuck in there for too long.
That's right.
Oh, man. Well, since it's the new book, got to ask you this question again. So, if this wonderful book, this one is Business and Personal Secrets of Getting Unstuck. So, if this book was a food, what would it be and why?
Wow. That's a really good one. If this was a food, it would be some type of vegetable that most people don't want to eat because you need it, but you don't like it. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, you think, and then you hit the wall and now you're not happy. Well, you got to change. And then whatever that vegetable is that you don't like, you need to eat it, and you need to incorporate that into your life and change your model.
There we go. That's right, indeed. That's right. I got to change that model, indeed. That's right, indeed. Don't get the Nissan Altima, y'all. Don't do it.
That was good.
Oh, man. Well, coming down to the special question reserved for folks who made it to round 3 of the podcast. And this is the first time I actually get to ask you this one. So, my goodness. So, if somebody was to search your name 100 years from now, what do you hope that they find?
Wow. 100 years from now, I hope they can draw the conclusion that this is somebody who tried to make a difference, who tried to improve the situation for others. I think that's the greatest thing that we can be remembered for, is not what we accomplished as an individual, but what we helped other people accomplish.
Oh, that's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Well, I agree that that's definitely what they're going to find indeed, because a man has been doing a whole lot of work, and there's still a lot more work to do indeed. That's right, indeed, because he's just getting started indeed. And folks need to keep up with your journey. For those who weren't around for your first 2 interviews and they need to follow you now, what's the best way for folks to do so?
You can find me on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. My website is Frank Zaccari, my name, frankzaccari.com. We now have some workshops put together based on the books. We're doing some training for people who are writing books that want them to become bestsellers or to improve their exposure. We're still doing some talks, and it's a lot of fun. I'm having the time of my life. In a time when I'm supposed to be sitting in a rocking chair or playing golf or gardening or something. But I'm having the time of my life right now.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Head over to frankzaccari.com. Keep a contact with what this great man is doing. Indeed, my man's got them workshops going now based off these wonderful books. Indeed, that's right, indeed. Because you will think, you will learn, you'll laugh, and you'll lead a better life. Indeed, because he's got you covered like a blanket. Because my man lives his message, and he's been through the trenches in multiple lands and parts of the world, indeed. And he's got a whole lot to share. And you probably only got like maybe 3% of it tonight, indeed. That's right, indeed. So keep up with all the stuff that he's doing. So any parting words before we close up shop?
Always remember this: getting stuck is inevitable. Staying stuck is a choice.
Thanks a bunch for tuning in and setting aside some of your time to listen to this wonderful podcast, Going North. If you really enjoyed what you heard, do me a solid and share this with your network and someone that you care about that would get something out of it too. And be sure to subscribe to hear more, and heck, even check out the backlog if you would like, because there are hundreds of episodes to choose from, and they just keep getting better and not butter.